Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be looking at hobbies and how they can be beneficial, especially if you're just starting to learn English.
It's really interesting, because the article we have here actually goes pretty deep. It doesn't just say like hobbies are good.
Yeah.
It really gets into the why. So that's what we're going to try to uncover today, like why they're so beneficial and how they can specifically help someone who's like right at the beginning of learning English.
I like it. Okay, so this article claims that hobbies can actually make you healthier and happier.
Yeah.
Is there any truth to that, or is it just like, a bunch of feel-good fluff?
It's not just fluff. There's actually a lot of research now that shows just how much of a positive impact hobbies can have on your mental health and even physical health. So, for example, when you do things that you enjoy, your brain actually releases endorphins. And, endorphins are those mood boosters that can help reduce stress. And, sometimes they can even alleviate pain. It's like your brain's reward system. It gives you a little boost of happiness when you do something you love.
I like that. So it's not just about feeling good. It's like real physical changes happening in your brain.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I'm also curious about this whole creativity thing. The article mentions that too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially those hobbies that involve creative expression, like painting or writing or playing music. They can really get those parts of your brain working that are associated with problem solving and innovative thinking. It's like you're giving your brain a workout, and that helps build up those creative muscles, which in turn can help you approach language learning with a more flexible and inventive mindset.
That makes sense. It's like, it's not just about memorizing words. It's about finding like creative ways to actually use the language and understand it. For someone just starting to learn English, I bet that would feel really empowering.
Exactly. Instead of being intimidated by all the complexities of a new language, they can just kind of dive in with a sense of playfulness and experimentation, using their hobbies as a springboard for exploration.
I like it. Okay, so speaking of exploration, this article lists a ton of different hobbies. Everything from reading to gardening to even playing video games. Is there such a thing as like a best hobby for learning English?
Not necessarily. I really think the best hobby is the one that you're really passionate about, the one you can really lose yourself in. But it is interesting that so many hobbies, even those that don't seem directly related to language learning, can offer such unique benefits.
Okay, so for someone who's just starting to learn English, how do they even figure out where to start? Like which hobby might be best for them? It seems like there are so many options. It's got to feel kind of overwhelming.
It's a great question.
Hmm.
I think it really starts with just taking a moment to reflect on what really brings you joy. What are you curious about? What kind of activities make you feel like you're really energized and engaged? Don't overthink it. Just give yourself permission to kind of explore those possibilities. You might even surprise yourself.
I love that. It's about giving yourself permission to be a beginner again. And that open-mindedness can be so helpful for language learning too, right?
Absolutely. Embracing that learning process with curiosity and a willingness to experiment is key.
Okay, but let's be realistic here. For a lot of people, especially those who are just starting to learn a new language, they probably feel like they don't even have time for hobbies. Between work and family and all the other things going on in life, where are they supposed to find the time?
I hear that. It can definitely feel that way, especially when you're already juggling so much. But I think it's less about finding extra time and more about shifting how we think about hobbies. It's not about adding another item to our already overflowing to-do list. It's more about finding ways to integrate activities that we enjoy into our existing routines.
So instead of thinking like, okay, I need to block out an hour to dedicate to my hobby, it's more like, okay, how can I find those little pockets of time throughout the day where I can just enjoy something I love?
Exactly. It could be as simple as listening to English music while you're commuting to work or, reading a couple pages of an English book before you go to bed. Or even just, practicing some basic English phrases while you're cooking dinner. These small moments, when they're done consistently, they can have a pretty significant impact over time.
Okay, so it's about making language learning just a natural part of your daily life rather than like this separate thing you have to force yourself to do. I like that. So let's talk about some specific hobbies and how they can help someone learn English. I'm particularly interested in reading because that just seems like such a natural fit.
Yeah, for sure. Reading is a fantastic way to immerse yourself in the language, to really see grammar in action and to just absorb new vocabulary organically. A tip for anyone who's just starting out, don't feel like you need to start reading, complex novels or anything like that. Start with something simple and enjoyable, like maybe children's books or graphic novels. The most important thing is to find something that keeps you engaged and motivated to keep reading.
That's great advice. It's about finding that balance where, learning feels effortless and enjoyable. But I know some people struggle with reading, even in their native language. Are there any other hobbies that might be good for those who aren't really into reading?
Absolutely. So many options. For example, music is an incredibly powerful tool for language acquisition. When you think about it, when you listen to music, you're unconsciously picking up on rhythms and intonation patterns and even new words. And singing along to your favorite English songs can be a really fun way to practice your pronunciation and get more fluent.
I never thought about it that way, but it makes total sense. Music seems so different from language, but there's so much overlap there. I'm curious, are there any other hidden connections like that between hobbies and language learning that we might not even realize?
Definitely. Even something like gardening, which you might not think has anything to do with language learning, can be surprisingly beneficial. For example, you could learn the names of plants and flowers in English, or you could read gardening blogs or watch gardening tutorials in English, which could help you improve your comprehension and listening skills.
Wow, I never would have thought of gardening as like a language learning tool, but that makes so much sense. It's
Mhm.
all about finding those connections and, those opportunities to incorporate English into your everyday life.
Exactly. It's about shifting our mindset from seeing language learning as this separate task and instead thinking about it as an integrated part of our lives.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about reading and music and even gardening, but what about more active hobbies like sports or dancing? Can those help with English too?
For sure. Group activities like those are fantastic opportunities to practice your conversational skills in a setting that's fun and relaxed. You're naturally interacting with other people, using English to communicate, and learning new vocabulary that's specific to that activity.
It's like sneaking in some English practice without even realizing it. You're so focused on the activity that the language learning just becomes effortless.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of finding hobbies that you're truly passionate about. The learning just happens naturally as a byproduct of something you already enjoy doing.
Okay, so speaking of enjoyment, one hobby that comes to mind is playing video games. It's so popular, especially among younger people, and I'm curious if there's any language learning potential there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially video games that have those complex narratives and dialogues. They can really expose you to a ton of vocabulary and grammar structures. And, a lot of online games involve interacting with players from all over the world, so it gives you a chance to practice your English in a real-world setting.
That's so cool. It's like you're turning your gaming hobby into a secret language learning mission. I bet that's way more motivating than sitting down with a textbook.
Absolutely. When you're engaged and having fun, your brain is just way more receptive to new information, and that makes the whole learning process way more effective and enjoyable.
So we've talked about reading, music, and even video games, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about your personal experiences with hobbies. Have there been any hobbies that have really impacted your life or helped you in ways you didn't expect?
I've always been drawn to creative stuff. And one hobby that's had a huge impact on me is photography. It's taught me so much about patience and observation and, a deeper appreciation for the beauty that's all around us. And surprisingly, it's even helped me become a better communicator.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, when you think about it, photography is all about capturing a story or an emotion through a single image.
Hmm.
It really forces you to think about composition and lighting and how to convey your message visually. And those same principles apply to communication in general, whether you're writing an email, giving a presentation, or even just having a conversation.
That's fascinating. It's like photography has trained you to see the world in a different way, and that influences how you communicate with others.
Mhm.
Have you ever run into any challenges or setbacks in your hobbies? And if so, how did you deal with them?
Yeah, there have definitely been times when I felt stuck or frustrated, especially when I was first starting out with photography. I remember feeling really overwhelmed by all the technical stuff, like aperture and shutter speed. But I realized that the key was to just break down the learning process into smaller, more manageable chunks. So I started by just focusing on one concept at a time, practicing until I felt comfortable, and then moving on to the next one.
So it's all about embracing that beginner's mindset and not being afraid to make mistakes as you go. And I imagine that approach can be really helpful for language learning too.
Absolutely. Language learning is a journey. It's not a race. It's about celebrating those small wins, learning from your mistakes, and, just embracing the whole process with patience and perseverance.
I love that. It's a great reminder that, it's okay to stumble. It's okay to not be perfect as long as you keep moving forward. And I think that's such a powerful message for anyone, whether they're learning a new language, pursuing a hobby, or just trying to navigate, life's challenges.
I couldn't agree more. It's all about embracing the journey and finding joy in the process.
Okay, but let's be real. Life can get crazy, and finding time for hobbies, even the ones we love, can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
What are some practical tips for people who feel like they just don't have the time or the energy to pursue their passions?
I think it often comes down to just prioritizing what truly matters to you. It's about identifying those time wasters, those things that aren't really bringing us joy or fulfillment, and then replacing them with activities that do.
So it's about being mindful of how we're spending our time and making deliberate choices that really align with our values and goals.
Exactly. It's about creating space in our lives for the things that matter, even if that means letting go of some things that don't.
I love that. It's about decluttering not just our physical spaces, but also our mental and emotional spaces. Making room for things that bring us joy and help us grow.
Couldn't agree more. It's about creating a life that reflects who we truly are and allows us to thrive in all aspects of our being.
That's such a good point. And speaking of thriving, let's talk a little bit more about another important aspect of hobbies, which is their impact on our mental health. We touched on this a bit earlier with the endorphins, but I think it's worth exploring a little deeper.
Absolutely. In today's world, which is so fast-paced and, often overwhelming, it's more important than ever to take care of our mental well-being. And hobbies can play a big role in that, helping us manage stress, reduce anxiety, and just improve our overall mood.
Okay, so how do hobbies actually work their magic on our mental health? Is it just about taking our minds off our worries, or is there something more to it than that?
It's definitely more than just distraction. When we engage in activities we enjoy, it actually activates the reward centers in our brains, which, triggers the release of those feel-good chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. And that can have a huge impact on our mood, helping us feel less stressed and anxious.
So it's like a natural antidepressant without all the side effects. I'm also curious about how hobbies can give us a sense of purpose and accomplishment. The article talked about that too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. When we're engaged in hobbies, we often set goals for ourselves, whether it's learning a new skill or completing a project or even just, improving our performance. And when we achieve those goals, no matter how small, it gives us a boost of self-esteem and makes us feel like we're actually accomplishing something.
It's like a reminder that we're capable of learning and growing, that we're not just stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
And that sense of accomplishment can kind of spill over into other areas of our lives too, right?
For sure. When we feel confident and capable in one area, it often translates to other areas. We start to believe in ourselves more, and that has a ripple effect on our overall well-being.
I love that. It's like this chain reaction of positivity, all stemming from something as simple as, pursuing a hobby. But let's be real. Sometimes life throws us curveballs, and it can be tough to find the motivation or energy to do the things we love, even our hobbies. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling to make time for the things they're passionate about?
Yeah, that's completely understandable. When we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, it's natural to prioritize the things that feel urgent, like work deadlines or family obligations. But I think it's important to remember that self-care isn't a luxury, it's a necessity.
So even when it feels like there's no time at all,
Yeah.
it's crucial to make even a little bit of time for things that, bring us joy and nourish our souls.
Absolutely. Even just 15 minutes of doing something you love can make a world of difference in how you feel. It's about making a conscious effort to prioritize your well-being even when life feels chaotic.
I love that. It's a reminder that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's actually an act of self-preservation. And when we take care of ourselves, we're better equipped to handle the demands of life and show up as our best selves for the people around us.
I couldn't agree more. It's all about creating a sustainable rhythm for life, one that includes both productivity and rejuvenation.
And hobbies can play such a vital role in that balance, right? They give us the space to recharge, reconnect with ourselves, and, tap into our creativity and passions.
For sure. They're like these little oases of joy and fulfillment in the midst of our busy lives.
I love that imagery. So we've talked about the mental health benefits of hobbies, their ability to, reduce stress and anxiety, and how they can help boost our self-esteem and sense of purpose. But I'm also curious about how they affect our cognitive function. The article mentioned that hobbies can actually make us smarter.
That's right. When you engage in hobbies that stimulate your mind, like learning a new language or playing a musical instrument or doing puzzles, it can actually improve how your brain works, including things like memory, attention span, and problem-solving abilities.
So it's like a workout for our brains, keeping them sharp and agile as we get older. I'm also curious about how hobbies help us build resilience and adaptability. That was in the article too, wasn't it?
It was. Hobbies can help us develop those coping mechanisms for dealing with challenges and setbacks. When you're learning a new skill, you're bound to make mistakes and run into roadblocks along the way. But when you push through those challenges, you're building resilience and learning how to adapt to new situations.
So it's like a training ground for life's ups and downs. By overcoming challenges in our hobbies, we're kind of equipping ourselves to deal with challenges in other areas of our lives.
Exactly. It's all about developing that growth mindset, that belief that we can learn and grow from our experiences, even the tough ones.
I love that. It's a great reminder that challenges aren't failures. They're opportunities to learn and grow. And I think that's a powerful message for anyone, regardless of their age or experience.
I couldn't agree more. It's about embracing the whole journey with all its twists and turns and trusting that we have the strength and resilience to handle whatever comes our way.
That's a great point. And speaking of journeys, let's shift our focus a bit to the social benefits of hobbies. We touched on this a bit earlier with group activities like sports and dance, but I'm curious to explore how hobbies can help us build stronger relationships and a sense of community.
Yeah, hobbies can be fantastic catalysts for connection, especially these days. In this increasingly digital world where face-to-face interactions are becoming less and less common.
So how do hobbies bridge that gap and bring people together in meaningful ways?
Well, think about it. Hobbies give us this shared interest, this common ground that can spark conversations and help us bond with other people. When you're passionate about something, it's natural to want to share that passion with others.
It's like a built-in conversation starter, breaking down those initial barriers and creating a sense of camaraderie.
Exactly. And when you're participating in a hobby with other people, you're not just talking about the hobby itself. You're sharing stories and experiences and perspectives, and that can deepen those connections and create a sense of belonging.
It's like building a community around a shared passion.
Yeah.
A place where people can feel seen and heard and understood. And for someone who's learning English, I imagine that sense of community could be incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. Having a supportive group of people to practice your English with, to share your struggles and triumphs with, it can make the learning process so much more enjoyable and less intimidating.
It's like having a built-in cheer squad, encouraging you every step of the way. And it's not just about language learning. It's about building real friendships that can enrich your life in so many ways.
Couldn't agree more. It's about creating those human connections that make life more vibrant and fulfilling.
I love that. So we've talked about the social benefits of hobbies, their ability to bring people together, create a sense of community, and, provide that supportive environment for learning English.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about how hobbies help us, build self-awareness and understand ourselves better.
Hobbies can be incredibly insightful tools for self-discovery. When we do things we love, we're often revealing these hidden parts of ourselves, uncovering talents and passions that we didn't even know we had.
It's like a journey of self-exploration, peeling back the layers and discovering just how rich and complex we really are.
Exactly. And through that process of self-discovery, we start to understand our values better, our strengths, our weaknesses, and what really brings us joy.
It's like a treasure hunt within ourselves, uncovering those hidden gems that make us unique and special. And I imagine that self-awareness can be really helpful for language learning, too.
Oh, definitely. When we understand our own learning style, what our strengths and weaknesses are, we can tailor our approach to language learning to fit our individual needs and preferences.
It's like creating a personalized learning roadmap.
Yeah.
One that guides us towards fluency in a way that feels authentic and, fulfilling.
Exactly. It's about embracing our individuality and using it to our advantage in our language learning journey.
I love that. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the mental and social benefits of hobbies to their impact on our brain power and self-awareness. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how hobbies contribute to our sense of purpose and meaning in life.
Yeah, I think hobbies can be these powerful reminders of what really matters to us, what brings us joy, and what makes us feel truly alive. When we engage in activities that align with our values and passions, we tap into a deeper sense of purpose. It's like we finally have a sense of direction and meaning in our lives.
It's almost like our hobbies become this reflection of who we really are, a way to express ourselves and what we stand for.
Exactly. And that sense of purpose can really have a ripple effect. It influences how we interact with the world, how we treat other people, and how we approach life's challenges.
It's like our hobbies become a source of inspiration and motivation, reminding us of what's important and guiding us toward a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
Couldn't agree more. They're like these little beacons of light, illuminating our path and helping us navigate life with a sense of purpose and joy.
I love that. So we've talked about the profound impact that hobbies can have on our lives, boosting our well-being, fostering creativity, helping us build connections, and even helping us learn English. But before we move on, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the role of hobbies in today's world. With everything being so fast-paced and technology-driven, do you think they're more important now than ever before?
Absolutely. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with information and distractions and demands, hobbies give us this much-needed refuge, a space to disconnect from all that digital noise and reconnect with ourselves and the things that bring us joy.
It's like a digital detox for our minds and souls.
Yeah.
A chance to slow down, take a breath, and recharge.
Exactly. And, with so much becoming automated these days and, the rise of artificial intelligence, I think hobbies remind us of how important human connection and creativity are. And that pursuit of passions, that's what makes us human.
So they're not just about leisure or entertainment. They're about, protecting those parts of us that make life worth living.
Couldn't agree more. They're about celebrating our uniqueness, nurturing our creativity, and connecting with others in ways that are truly meaningful.
I love that. It's a great reminder that even in a world that's constantly changing and, evolving, something as simple as pursuing a hobby can have a big impact on our well-being, our relationships, and even our ability to learn a new language.
Absolutely. It speaks volumes about the power of human passion and creativity and that enduring need for connection and self-expression.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we've laid a really good foundation for understanding just how powerful hobbies can be, both for personal growth and for learning English.
I agree. And in our next segment, let's dig a little deeper into some specific hobbies and explore how each one can benefit someone who's just starting to learn English.
Sounds great. We've got a lot more to unpack, so be sure to join us for part 2 of our deep dive into the world of hobbies.
Welcome back. So I'm excited to kind of dig deeper into some specific hobbies and how they can be used to help someone who's just starting to learn English,
Me too. I think it's one thing to say reading is good.
Yeah.
But it's a whole other thing to give people advice on, how to actually do that. So where should we start?
Well, let's go back to reading since we talked about it before. It's such an important part of learning any language. I mean, for someone who's just starting with English, it's it's like opening this window into how the language works.
Yeah. But we also talked about how it can feel kind of intimidating, too. So, what are some things people can do to make reading in English a little less scary and a little more enjoyable, especially if they're just starting out?
I think the most important thing is to choose stuff to read that matches your current level and your interests. Don't feel like you need to jump right into, Shakespeare or anything. Start with something simpler, like children's books or those books that are specifically made for English language learners, those graded readers.
Right. So starting with something you can actually understand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting to you. That's key to building confidence and staying motivated. What about finding things to read that are related to their hobbies?
That's a great idea. If someone loves to cook, maybe they could start by reading simple recipes in English or checking out some food blogs. Or if they're really into sports, they could look for articles or websites about their favorite teams or athletes.
I like it. It's about making those connections between the things they're passionate about and their language learning goals. It just makes the whole process feel more natural and less like, work or studying. What about making reading in English a little more interactive, more engaging? Any tips there?
One technique I always recommend is reading out loud. It might feel a little awkward at first, but it's a really good way to practice your pronunciation and improve your fluency. You could even record yourself reading and then listen back to it. That way you can hear where you might need to improve.
I like that. And it also helps with getting comfortable hearing yourself speak in English, which can be tough for some people. What about other strategies for active reading? Anything else come to mind?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Don't be afraid to, highlight or underline words or phrases that you don't understand. Look them up, grab a dictionary or use an online translator. And then see if you can use those new words or phrases in your own sentences. It's you're really interacting with the text,
Yeah.
And that helps you understand the new vocabulary and grammar better.
It's turning reading into something that's dynamic, and you're really participating instead of just passively reading the words. What about online resources? Are there any good websites or apps that can help people who are just starting to read in English?
Oh, tons. There are so many great resources online, from apps that make reading interactive to websites that are full of, stories and articles.
Yeah.
There are even online communities where you can connect with other English learners and share book recommendations and stuff.
That's awesome. It's like having a virtual book club right at your fingertips. Okay, so we've covered some good strategies for using reading to help learn English. What's next on our list?
Okay, let's talk about music. We touched on it a bit earlier. It's such a powerful tool for learning a language, and it's something that pretty much everyone enjoys no matter what language they speak.
I love that. It's fun and educational. But for someone who's just starting to learn English, where do they even start? I mean, there's so much music out there. It's got to be a little overwhelming.
Yeah, just start with music that you really enjoy, you know? It doesn't matter what kind of music it is or who the artist is. The important thing is to find music that you connect with emotionally, music that you actually want to listen to and sing along with.
So, like, if someone's really into pop music, they shouldn't force themselves to listen to classical music just because they think it'll be more educational.
Exactly. If you don't enjoy the music, you're not going to want to engage with the language. You know, start with something that makes you want to tap your feet and sing along, even if you don't understand all the words at first.
That makes sense. It's about making it fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the actual learning part? How can people use music to actively improve their English?
One really easy but effective thing you can do is just pay attention to the lyrics, you know? Try to follow along with the words as you're listening.
Yeah.
And look up any words or phrases you don't understand.
Yeah, that's classic advice.
Yeah.
But it still works. And with the internet, you can find lyrics to almost any song out there. What about taking that a step further? Anything else we can do?
Of course. Once you've got the lyrics down, try singing along. Don't worry about sounding perfect or anything. Just try to copy the pronunciation and the way the singer sings the words.
It's like a fun way to practice your pronunciation without feeling self-conscious. Do you have any other tips for using music to learn English?
You could make playlists of English songs that focus on specific grammar points or vocabulary themes. For example, you could create a playlist of songs that all use the present perfect tense. Or you could make a playlist of songs that are about travel or food, you know, whatever interests you.
That's a cool idea. It's like creating your own personalized English learning soundtrack, and it makes it more focused and intentional.
Yeah, exactly. And as you listen to those playlists, pay attention to how the language is actually being used, you know, in context. That will help you understand the grammar and vocabulary on a deeper level. It's not just about memorizing rules and definitions anymore.
It's like seeing the language come alive in the real world, which is so much more interesting than just studying from a textbook.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of repetition. The more you listen to and sing along with English songs, the more you'll start to internalize the sounds and the rhythms and the structure of the language.
It's like you're immersing yourself in the sounds of English, letting it all sink in.
That's a great way to put it. And the best part is music is so portable. You can listen to English songs anywhere, you know, on the bus, while you're working out, even while you're cooking dinner.
It's about finding those little ways to make English a part of your everyday life without it feeling like a chore.
Exactly. And, you know, as you get more comfortable with listening and pronunciation, you could even start to explore other things about music, like, you know, the history of English music or the cultural context of different genres.
So it's like opening this door to a whole world of new discoveries and understanding, all through the power of music. I like that. Okay, so we've talked about reading, we've talked about music. What other hobbies do you think can be helpful for someone who's just starting to learn English?
Okay, well, how about something that might seem a little unexpected? Gardening. Now, I know it doesn't sound like it has anything to do with learning a language, but it can actually be really beneficial, especially for people who like to work with their hands and be out in nature.
Really? I wouldn't have thought about gardening as a language learning tool. How does that work?
Well, just think about it. Gardening involves learning a whole new vocabulary, you know? All those words for plants and flowers and tools and techniques.
So it's a natural opportunity to pick up new words in a very specific area.
Okay.
I like it. So how could someone who's new to English incorporate gardening into their language learning routine?
Easy. Start by learning the names of common plants and flowers in English. You could use flashcards or look them up online. You could even just, you know, write the English names on little labels and stick them in your garden.
It's like you're creating your own little English garden. That's cool. Are there any other benefits to gardening for language learners?
Of course. It's a great way to practice your listening skills, especially if you're listening to a gardening podcast or watching a video in English. And if you join a gardening club or a community garden, you'll get to practice talking in English with people who share your interest.
That's a great point. It's like turning your hobby into a social and educational experience. What other hobbies are out there that people might not think of as being helpful for language learning?
Okay, well, what about cooking and baking? Just like gardening, those hobbies have their own special vocabulary, you know, all those words for ingredients and techniques and measurements.
Right, but how can someone who's just starting to learn English actually use cooking or baking to improve their language skills. I mean, it can be intimidating enough to follow a recipe even in your own language.
Just start with simple recipes that have easy to understand instructions, and use ingredients you already know. There are tons of resources online, like websites and YouTube channels that are specifically for beginners.
So it's about finding resources that meet you where you're at and give you that extra support.
What are some other tips for incorporating cooking and baking into an English learning routine?
You could watch cooking shows or videos in English. Pay attention to the words they use and how they explain the steps, and then try to make the recipe yourself following the instructions in English.
It's like having your own personal English-speaking chef teaching you how to cook. And it's a super fun way to learn new words and cooking techniques. What about the social aspect of cooking and baking?
That's another great benefit. Cooking and baking are often social activities.
Yeah.
You can invite friends or family to join you, and you can practice speaking English while you're chopping veggies, measuring ingredients, or just enjoying the food you've made together.
It's like turning your kitchen into an English learning lab. And the best part is you get to eat delicious food as a reward. I like it. So we've talked about reading, music, gardening, cooking and baking. What else is out there? Okay, let's change things up a bit and talk about something more active. Sports. Whether you're a super fan or you just enjoy playing for fun sports can be a really fun way to practice your English.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sports have a lot of their own special vocabulary, and there's always a lot of talking happening, whether you're playing on a team or just chatting about a game with your friends.
Right. And for someone who's just starting to learn English, it can be a great way to immerse themselves in the language and the culture of the game.
So where should someone start? Should they try to understand the rules of something complicated like cricket right away, or is there a more gradual approach?
I would say start with a sport that you're already familiar with or that you're curious about. It could be anything, basketball, soccer, tennis, or even something less common like badminton or volleyball. The important thing is to choose something that interests you and makes you want to learn more about it in English.
It's about using your interest as a starting point for language learning. What are some specific ways someone could use sports to improve their English?
Well, you could watch games or highlights in English and pay attention to the commentary, and listen to the vocabulary they use. You could even turn on the subtitles or closed captions so you can see the words written out as you're listening.
That's a good tip. And with all the streaming services and online platforms out there, it's easier than ever to find sports content in English from all over the world. What about actually playing a sport?
That's another great option. If you join a local sports league or team, you'll get to practice your English in a real-life setting while you're interacting with your teammates and, even your opponents.
That sounds like a workout for your body and your brain. And it's fun, too. What other tips do you have for using sports to learn English?
You could read articles or websites about sports in English. Start with some easier articles that summarize game results or talk about players. And then you can work your way up to more challenging articles that, analyze game strategies or talk about current events in the sports world.
It's about gradually building your skills and learning more and more words in a subject that interests you. And thanks to the internet, there's a ton of sports content out there covering pretty much every sport you can imagine.
Yeah, for sure. There's so much out there. It's all about finding what you like and using it to help you on your language learning journey.
Okay, so we've talked about reading, music, gardening,
Yeah.
cooking, baking, and sports. Any other hobbies come to mind that could be helpful?
Well, how about something that's all about creativity and expressing yourself? Arts and crafts. It doesn't matter if you like to paint or draw or sculpt or knit or crochet or anything like that. Arts and crafts can be a really unique and engaging way to practice your English.
That's interesting. I can see how arts and crafts would be good for people who learn best visually, but how does it help with language specifically?
Well, a lot of arts and crafts projects involve following instructions or patterns, and that can be a great way to practice reading in English and learn new words.
So it's another opportunity to engage with a written language in a way that's actually meaningful and enjoyable. What other ways could someone who's new to English use arts and crafts to help them learn?
You could watch crafting tutorials or videos in English. There are tons of them online covering all sorts of different crafts.
Yeah.
You could even try to do the project yourself while you're watching and listening to the instructions in English.
That's like having a personal English-speaking crafting teacher right there with you. And it's a fun and creative way to learn new skills and new vocabulary at the same time. What about the social side of arts and crafts?
That's another great thing about it. A lot of arts and crafts activities are social, You could join a crafting group or go to a workshop or just create something with your friends or family. And while you're doing that, you can practice speaking English. Share ideas, ask for help, show off what you've made.
It's like turning your crafting hobby into a chance to connect with others and communicate, all while you're improving your English. And you might even meet new friends who share your interests.
Exactly. What other tips do you have for using arts and crafts as a language learning tool?
Well, you could check out some English language crafting blogs or websites or even social media groups. You'll find tons of inspiration and patterns and tutorials. And you might even connect with other crafters from all over the world.
It's like tapping into this global community of creativity and language learning, and it's a great way to expand your vocabulary and learn about different crafting techniques and traditions from different cultures.
That's so cool. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Reading music gardening, cooking, baking sports, arts and crafts. I'm starting to see how pretty much any hobby can be used to learn English if you approach it the right way.
Exactly. It's not about finding the one perfect hobby for language learning. It's about finding things that you enjoy and then figuring out how to work English into those activities.
I love that. It's about making language learning feel less like something you have to do and more like just a natural part of the things you already love to do.
Absolutely. And when you find that balance, where it feels natural, the learning just becomes effortless and enjoyable. And that means you're more likely to stick with it. Keep learning in the long run.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, so before we wrap up this part, I want to talk about one more hobby that's super popular, especially with younger people. Video games.
Ah, yes, video games. The world of virtual adventures and stories. Video games can be amazing for language learning, especially for people who love to get really immersed in an experience.
I get it. But for someone who's just starting to learn English, how can they use video games to help them? There are so many different types of games out there. Where do you even begin?
Start by picking games that are right for your level and that you actually find interesting. Don't feel like you have to jump into those super complicated games with tons of dialogue and stuff right away. Start simple.
Yeah.
Games that have clear goals and not too much talking.
So like a puzzle game or a mobile game could be a good place to start.
Yeah, exactly. And then as you get more comfortable with the language, you can try some more challenging games. Do you want some more specific tips?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, one thing you can do is change the game's language settings to English. That way you're surrounded by English words and grammar all the time while you're playing. You can also turn on the subtitles so you can read along as the characters are talking.
So it's like a sneaky way to practice your reading and listening while you're having fun.
Right.
What about the social side of video games?
Yeah, a lot of games, especially online games, let you interact with other players. And that's a great opportunity to use your English in a real-world setting, You can chat with your teammates, come up with strategies, or even just make small talk while you're waiting for the game to start.
It's like turning your hobby into this whole social and language adventure. And you can meet people from all over the world who share your love of gaming. That's really cool.
And as you get better at English, you can start doing more complicated things, like joining a guild or a clan or participating in online forums and chat rooms. You could even stream your gameplay online and talk to people while you're playing.
It's about finding ways to use your hobby to really challenge yourself and grow. I like it.
Yeah, and video games are always changing and getting bigger.
Yeah.
So there's always something new to try and new things to learn.
It's like this giant playground for language learning.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered reading music, gardening, cooking, baking, sports, arts and crafts, and video games.
Yeah.
Wow, I think we've shown that pretty much any hobby can help you learn English if you're willing to put in a little effort.
Absolutely. It's all about finding hobbies that make you happy and excited and curious, and then just find creative ways to bring English into those activities.
I love that. It's about making language learning feel less like a chore and more like just a natural part of the things you already enjoy doing.
Exactly. And when it feels natural, the learning just happens.
Yeah.
It's effortless and fun, and that makes it so much easier to stick with it.
Couldn't agree more. All right, so welcome back to our deep dive into the world of hobbies. We've talked about so many amazing benefits, from stress relief to boosting creativity, and how hobbies can help you learn English, especially when you're just starting out.
It's been a really fun exploration. We've seen how hobbies can, light up different parts of our brains, help us connect with other people, and even uncover hidden talents that we didn't even know we had.
For sure. But let's be real, life can get pretty crazy. Sometimes finding the time for hobbies, even the ones we love, can feel impossible. What advice would you give to our listeners who are, struggling to make time for the things they're passionate about, especially while they're also trying to learn a new language?
You're absolutely right. Time is precious, especially when you're juggling work and family and all the other things life throws at you. But I think instead of thinking about, finding extra time, maybe we need to change our perspective a little bit. Instead of seeing hobbies as like these separate things that take up a lot of time, what if we try to integrate them into our everyday routines?
So it's more about finding those little pockets of time throughout the day where we can squeeze in, some enjoyment and some learning.
Exactly. Like if you love music, maybe instead of scrolling through social media on your commute, you could listen to an English podcast or some English songs. Or if you're really into cooking, try challenging yourself to cook a new recipe in English once a week.
I love those ideas. It's about making those small intentional choices that align with our passions and what we want to learn.
Yeah.
But what about those days when you're just completely wiped out? Is it okay to just, give ourselves permission to just relax and recharge?
Absolutely. Self-care is so important, and sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to just rest. Pushing yourself when you're already tired can lead to burnout, and that can actually make it harder to learn and make progress.
It's about finding that balance between challenging ourselves and giving ourselves a break when we need it. What other practical tips do you have for making time for hobbies when life is so busy?
Well, one thing I always recommend is scheduling time for your hobbies. Just like you would schedule a meeting or an appointment, even if you can only block out 30 minutes a couple times a week, it can make a big difference.
So it's about treating our hobbies with the same importance as our other commitments. Like it's not just something we do if we have time left over.
Right. And don't be afraid to start small. If you're feeling overwhelmed, just pick one hobby and try to spend even just 15 minutes a day doing it.
It's those small, consistent habits that eventually become a natural part of our lives. But what about, those unexpected things that come up, like a crazy work deadline or, maybe your kid gets sick? How can we be flexible and adapt our hobby time without feeling like we're constantly sacrificing our passions?
Life is full of surprises. It's important to be flexible. If something comes up and you have to change your plans, don't be too hard on yourself. Just try to reschedule your hobby time as soon as you can.
So it's about having a plan, but also being willing to roll with the punches when things don't go exactly as planned.
Exactly. And, it's okay to say no to things that drain your energy or that don't fit with your priorities.
I know. That could be so hard, especially for people who like to make everyone happy. But it's about setting boundaries and protecting our time for the things that are really important to us.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, even those small moments of joy and engagement with your hobbies can have a big impact on your overall well-being and motivation, including your motivation to learn English.
I love that. It's like a reminder that taking care of ourselves isn't selfish. It's actually a way to invest in ourselves and our ability to do well in all areas of our lives. Okay, but before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to talk about one more thing: community. We talked about joining groups and finding online communities. But what if someone is more introverted? Someone who prefers to do their hobbies alone. Can they still get those social and language learning benefits?
Definitely. Joining groups is a great way to connect with people, but it's not the only way. Even if you like to do your hobbies by yourself, you can still be part of a community online. There are blogs and forums and social media groups where people share their passions.
You can connect with people who have the same interests and learn from each other, even if you don't actually talk to them directly.
Exactly. And, sometimes just reading what other people are saying can be really helpful. You can pick up new words and expressions, and you can learn about different ways of approaching your hobby.
It's like having a bunch of mentors, all sharing their knowledge and inspiration with you.
That's a great way to think about it. And even the most introverted people can benefit from a sense of community and connection, even if it's just online.
I like that. It's a reminder that we're not alone in our passions, and that there are always people out there who share our interests and who want to connect with us, whether it's online or in person.
Well said. I think we've covered some really valuable information today about the power of hobbies, both for personal growth and for language learning.
I agree. We talked about practical tips for making time for hobbies even when life is crazy. We discussed how important it is to be kind to ourselves and to be flexible. And we explored the power of community, both online and offline.
It's been a pleasure talking about this with you, and I hope that everyone listening feels inspired to maybe try a new hobby or go back to an old one, and to remember that hobbies can bring so much joy and fulfillment to your life, and they can even help you on your journey to learning English.
I couldn't agree more. So what are you waiting for? Think about what interests you. What are you curious about? Maybe there's a hobby you've always wanted to try, or one you used to love that you could pick up again. It could be the perfect way to boost your English skills and have some fun at the same time.
Remember, the most important thing is to find something that you're truly passionate about. Don't be afraid to experiment and try new things. You never know what you might discover.